This is Israeli Technology Founders Speak, a podcast of conversations with successful Israeli high-tech and biotech entrepreneurs. With your host, Avraham Hermon. Dr. Nisim Perets is the co-founder and CEO of Itay&Beyond, an Israeli biotech startup that integrates patient-derived brain organoids with advanced AI analysis to predict drug efficacy for neurological and psychiatric disorders. Their innovation aims to improve drug development by providing accurate human-based models, reducing the reliance on animal testing, and enhancing patient outcomes. Avraham sat down with Nisim in the offices of Itay&Beyond to discuss what it means to use a patient's brain cells for testing drugs, how they came up with the idea, how the company was funded, tips for startup founders, and much more. This podcast is a creation of J.M.B. Davis Ben David, an intellectual property law firm serving clients around the world. You have great innovations. We keep them safe. It's not enough to just have a great startup idea or innovation. If you don't legally protect your innovation's products and brand, anyone can claim them as their own. We keep your great innovation secure. Learn more by going to jmbdavis.com. That's jmbdavis.com.
Thank you, Dr. Nisim Perets, for inviting me to your office. And it's great to be here in your Tel Aviv office, a beautiful office. What problem does Itay&Beyond solve?
So Itay&Beyond is a drug discovery platform company. We develop a technology that can predict the efficacy of drugs and compounds for neurological and psychiatric disorders. One of the biggest challenges of medicine today, especially the brain medicine and neurology and psychiatry, is how would you predict the efficacy of a drug from the preclinical studies to the clinic?
Mm-hmm. So just for our listeners, preclinical is like in animals and rat models, mouse models,
exactly.
And things like that.
Or even before, when you synthesize a compound or you have some kind of a molecule, you can test it also on cells in a dish. And then you see some molecules that are disrupted or overexpressed, or you see changes in the molecular or genetic function of the cells. It's also preclinic. So it's from the beginning of how you develop a compound up to the level of you try to test the efficacy on mice or rats or other animals. And then you go to the clinical studies. In the field of neurology and psychiatry, the translations between the preclinic and the clinical studies and the clinical success are extremely low, less than 1%. In the last 20 years, only 5 new drugs were approved by the FDA for all the psychiatric and neurological dysfunctions. When I'm talking about approval, those are new compounds, not repurposed. We can talk about the difference, but new compounds. And beside them, just one new drug was recently approved this year for schizophrenia. So the purpose of Itay&Beyond is basically to make this number increase dramatically.
Mm-hmm. So better care for patients and psychiatric fields, potentially developing new drugs quicker and at a lower cost?
Yeah, but it's more of predicting the efficacy before. So there are two traditional ways to develop drugs. The first one is what a lot of people are imagining when you take a compound and then go to the FDA and you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, 10 years of development. And the problem is that you need to gamble, I would say, on your compound at phase 1 for it to be successful at phase 3,
right?
And that's a big problem. So Itay&Beyond, we're developing a method, and I will explain a lot about this method of how to predict the efficacy of compounds before the phase 3. So you will know. Okay. So it won't save money, but it will increase the level of success or the chances of success. The second way is to do repurposing, which means to take a drug that is already approved for, let's say, epilepsy, and to see if it works on schizophrenia, for example. Our technology can help with this in reducing also the chances of failure, but also the cost effective, to know better of which population it can work or something like this.
So can you explain briefly how that technology works?
The story of the technology starts with, I would say, a breakthrough about a decade ago. The ability to take a cell from a patient or from a person, any type of cell. It can be a cell from the skin or a cell from other organ, and to reprogram it for it to become a stem cell. Stem cells are the original cells of our body that has the potential to become each other type of cell later on. And then we use this technology to take cells from a patient. We extract cells from urine sample even. I don't know, not a lot of people knows, but when people give urine, then you have living cells secreting out. We can collect them non-invasively, obviously, and then reprogram them to become stem cells. From these stem cells, we have the ability to generate every other type of cell of their body with their genetic and their biology. And we are growing from these stem cells something that calls organoids. Organoids are a 3D culture that is functional, and we grow brain organoids, which means that from a urine sample, we have the ability to grow a living miniature functioning brain tissue of the patient. That's the ability of our company.
So it's essentially like a clump of brain-like cells that are originating from a specific human patient.
Exactly. They are functioning in the matter that they can encode information, which is very important because the brain, unlike other organs, its function is not related to the structure. Okay, so for example, the liver and the lungs and the heart, the function and the structure are the same. When, for example, the heart, okay, when it shrinks, then you know that it pushes the blood out, and when it
expands,
yeah, so it pulls it in. So you know what to do. In the brain, it's differently. It's some kind of a machine that encodes information. And in neurology and psychiatry, it's a big problem because you don't really know what the information is and what went wrong just by looking at the brain. So what our technology is really doing is to take these brain tissues and connect them to a computer, okay, using multi-electrode array, and to extract the information and to also encode information inside them. It's a technology that's called closed-loop reinforcement learning. So we connect them with electricity, bilateral, which means that we read the electricity that they are the neurons, the cells of the brain, and the brain itself is an electronic device, I would say.
Right.
It generates electricity, and that's how it's encoded information. So we can read online this information and also communicate, like to insert different types of information inside. It's called closed loop. So what we're basically doing is that we use this technology to teach the brain organoids to play simple computer games. And this helps us. I see you like.
Yeah, well, it's almost like science fiction because you're making little brains, and then you're teaching the brains something.
Yeah, this is what we do. Again, it's not something that we invented. Very important to say that we didn't invent it. We're just, I would say, make it more applicable for this purpose. It's a new type of science. It's not something so traditional, but it exists the closed loop reinforcement learning in several, I would say, variations. We're taking it to brain organoids in order to predict the efficacy of drugs. So what have we done so far? We took the hundreds of brain organoids from a patient. Some of them are normal from the normal population, and some of them have some kind of neurological dysfunction. It can be low functioning autism, which we will talk about why our company is focusing on autism. It's related to the history of the company. And some of them have other disorders such as epilepsy or schizophrenia. And we compare the function of the brain organoids from normal patients to the brain organoids of each population, like autism or epilepsy or schizophrenia, etc. And what we see in the neuronal coding, the way that the brain works, or in the manifestation of how they play the game, is completely different, I would say, functions between the normal and the abnormal population. And we use this gap to search for drugs that can improve it. And this is basically our prediction of efficacy.
Interesting. Okay. So what you're doing is essentially you're making brain organoids that will act like brains of, for example, autistic patients, and then testing drugs on those organoids.
Yeah.
Okay.
It comes to replace the need in preclinical studies. The reason that we use mice, for example, or rats, is just because they can go in a maze, okay?
Right.
And then you give them a drug, for example, for Alzheimer, and you see if their memory is improved by the drug. Otherwise, you don't have a functional readout. Like, you can give drugs and then slice the brain, but you will not know if the memory improved. So you need the maze, okay?
All right.
But the problem is that mice or rats themselves don't really have autism, schizophrenia, epilepsy. We induce it to them and then we try to cure it. So it's not working. Eventually the drugs are not translatable.
You're giving them a condition that's somewhat like autism or someone like Alzheimer's
exactly,
disease, but not exactly like it, right?
It's not even close, okay? And then all the drugs are really they don't succeed. And companies spend billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and failed time after time. And what we do is to take the basic biology of the patients, and what missing there is the functional readout. Okay, so when you have just the organoids, it's like you have the rat's brain and you don't know what to do with it. So exactly the same. So we generated the functional readout to fill this gap.
Wow, sounds fascinating. Can you tell me, where did the idea for this company come from?
In my PhD, I studied nanovesicles called exosomes. I was in a different field. It's not completely different field, for drug delivery. And one of my projects focused on psychiatric disorders, and specifically autism. We had autistic-like mice that were induced. And I wanted to see if these nanocarriers of drugs can help recovering some of their phenotype. Okay. And it worked very good. We published a lot of papers on it, and also Tel Aviv University had a patent on this method. And then one of the papers came to a person named Shmulik. He's my co-founder and partner today in the company. And Shmulik has an autistic son named Itay, on his name, the Itay&Beyond, our company. And they did, Shmulik and his wife, all the tests that a person can have, like a genetic test and everything that science know. And Itay is in a low functioning status, really low functioning. But all the results came clean, like the genetics don't have a genetic mutation, and everything was good. So he came to me and he asked if we can develop a new method of trying to diagnose or to understand better and to have better treatment. And I said, after I finished my PhD, I said that's interesting because there's a new methods of stem cells and stuff, and this is something that you probably didn't do. And we can grow little brains of Itay or other kids, and to see if we see something first that is not by the, I would say, traditional science, not genetically. Then we opened Itay&Beyond, me and Shmulik as partner, and then another partner named Boaz came along, and we established this technology. The first thing that we saw was that Itay was our first, or one of our very first patients. We saw things that I couldn't really, it was better than we expected.
Wow.
Yeah, because first of all, the brain organoids of Itay compares to the normal patient, I would say, I would use like healthy volunteers. They were completely different in the way that they grow or their function. They're completely different. So immediately I knew that, okay, it's not something probably monogenetic, which means that a single mutation, like all the doctors were searching in a simple analysis, it's something more complicated, but it's definitely biological. There's something biological, very strong biological process that is impaired, and probably is not based on a single mutation. Maybe a combination of unknown conditions or genetic mutations or something, but leading to a severe case of neuronal malfunction here. And that was the idea. It wasn't something that we said at the beginning, I will found a company over an idea that I had in my head. Shmulik came to me with a need. Come help me to diagnose what my son has. He traveled all around the world and searching for a treatment or a better diagnostic tool for his son. And he couldn't find. And I said, yeah, obviously it was very clear to me why he couldn't find, because I said it's a neurological problem. We need this and this and this. So if you want, we can do it. And that's how we started.
Wow. It's pretty amazing. Let's talk a little bit about intellectual property. As you know, I'm an intellectual property lawyer. How important is IP for your company, for Itay&Beyond?
In general, intellectual property is something very important in biotech and pharma companies. Specifically for Itay, I would start with my experience with intellectual property and then I go to how much is it important to us. In my PhD, I had 2 patents written in the field of exosomes, in using exosomes, the small nanocarriers, for several neurological and psychiatric disorders, and also for spinal cord injury. So the first patent was licensed for several companies that tried to take it to the clinic for autism and other disorders. And the second patent on spinal cord injury was licensed to a new company named Nurexon that was established on it, and then it is now listed in the Canada stock market to take the nanocarriers for spinal cord injury to the clinic. Okay. So I came very early on with experience of what patents in science mean. How can you protect an idea or a research? It's not that easy of a task. And then I worked in Nurexon for a while when it was established. Between the time that Shmuley came to me and we established Itay&Beyond to when I finished my PhD. And over there, I submitted together with the team another 4 patents. And the reason that we needed over there another 4 patents, except of the patent that the company was established on, is because they had a patent, they didn't have freedom to operate, which is totally different. Like it's a subtopic. They didn't have it. So we needed.
In other words, there were patents that were preventing their development.
Yeah. So
of
we needed
other third parties.
Yeah. And we needed to bypass this, which means to develop technologies, to invent new technology, because one of their patent was for the third party was very hard to bypass. So we needed to be creative, and that was my job over there, to be creative. So we invented a way to bypass it, and then I would say we succeeded. So I came to Itay&Beyond with a lot of experience of what is the importance of patents. The first thing that we did, one of the first, was to see what is our freedom to operate. And we found that in the field of organoids, and even though it's new, there are lots of patents already, and there are lots of people, already in this field. So we mapped it, and then when we had this technology, I together with the patent lawyers that we worked with, we mapped the places that we could protect ourselves, that would give us the freedom to operate that we need, and we submitted 4 patents. Now we're submitting another one, to cover as much as possible of technology. You can't always protect the core of the technology, because it's not something that we invented from the beginning, but you can protect the use of some of the aspects of the technology for specific purpose, or if we did some fundamental change to make it work better, or something unexpected. We submitted several patents on it.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of interesting and varied experience with IP. So that probably helps you as a CEO.
Yeah,
as well.
Definitely, because it's it's very easy to think that to not understand the full or to grasp the full, I would say, spectrum of the things that you need to know. Like you can have very successful to invent something very, very good, or that it works very well, but you cannot make it marketable. You just can't. And if as a CEO, you don't even know that it's a problem, because it's not like other fields, I would say, in high tech, or when it's a program. So it's a different type of game over there. You want to get to the market as fast as possible. Here it takes time, and eventually your greatest assets are your patents. This is your strongest case, and that's eventually what you're going to hold on to.
Right, and that's what your investors are going to be investing in, which brings me to my next question, which is, talk to me a little bit about investment. Where do you get investment from? How has that process been going?
Shmulik is a high-tech entrepreneur, and when he came to me, he suggested his funding. So he's the first investor of the company. And then Boaz was one of his partners in the businesses that they did, and the companies that they had successful joined us. So he was the second. At the beginning, Shmulik and Boaz didn't want to take other people's money for this project, because it was considered to be too risky for them. They said, this is a great idea. Are you sure you can take urine and to grow brains and to make them play. And we don't know. It sounds great. We will put our money on. And then when we succeeded after 2.5 years, more or less, like to really show that not only that we can do it, we also have differentiation. Then we started talking with other investors just after 2-3 years after the company was established. And it's an ongoing process now. The company is, as I said at the beginning earlier, maybe was established at 2021. So we're now in the phase that we feel ready and confident that the technology is robust enough and strong enough to raise money. We started speaking with VCs and private investors. We'll see how it goes.
Can you talk to me a little bit about connections with big pharma companies in the industry? Because it seems to me that you're offering a tool that they will be the users of, right? So do you have any connections, and how do you make those connections?
So you're right. We basically, the technology, the first application of it is to work together with pharma companies to help them bring more compounds successfully to the clinic. But this is just the first case. The second case is to use it for our own. Talking about IP, I would just put a remark on it that we are gonna use the technology to develop our own product, to write IP on them, and then to suggest it to the pharma companies. But right now we are talking with a few pharma companies about just making them interest in our technology. So the way that we approach them is because we are a young company, mainly by connections, like if it's someone that I know from my work in Nurexon or from networks, so etc., and he linked to someone in other companies that we're interested in. So it's just, we usually don't approach directly to them at this stage. It's by trying to figure out how to get to a specific person using our own network, and then this is what we do. So far, we talked with a few in Teva, for example, and they said that the technology is extremely promising, and we approached them in several levels, progress stages, and the feedback that we got that in just a short time it would be convincing enough. We need to collect a bit more data to increase the N. The N is the number of patients. So we came to them when we had a very small number of patients as a proof of concept. Now we have much bigger. So we're gonna do another round soon with the pharma companies.
Let's talk a little bit about difficulties you've had to struggle with when forming the company and founding the company and getting to the point where you are today, where you feel confident that you can go to investors.
The story of Itay&Beyond, I would say it's a bit different than other. And my story is a bit different than other entrepreneurs. I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I saw myself as a scientist. So when Shmuley came with this offer, I was a scientist, just joined to an entrepreneur and together trying to figure out something. And because we already had the funding of Shmuley, then it was we had something to start with. And then came the main challenge of things that seems to not work properly in the during the development. Okay. The organoids at the beginning, we used several protocols of growing them that they didn't communicate well, and we didn't they didn't have enough electricity on them to do what we think possible. So it was like half a year that we tried a lot of things, and then when we succeeded, so during this half a year, I doubted if like that was not that too ambitious. It was there, like we could touch it, but it wasn't. It's like you have everything, but it's not working. So that was half a year that I started thinking myself, maybe we should do something a bit different, not to give up, but to be less ambitious. Like we can do other things, like with the organoids, not teach them to play computer games and stuff. We can do more conventional stuff, but I wanted this. And I always tried to make it not as a huge challenge, but to say, and luckily Shmulik and Boaz, they also in the field of IP, which is also very important. And they say it's good that we have challenges in this stage,
right?
Because it means that when we'll overcome them, we have something that we invented or improved. And so we took this disadvantage and became an advantage. Luckily, from the beginning of the company, we didn't spin off a lot and didn't, they struggle a lot. I think that the things that we expected to happen, they happen in a reasonable time. Not the fastest, but a reasonable time. we had lots of doubts from other parties and people and institutes before. For example, the Israeli Innovation, I can say it, right? The Israeli Innovation.
Sure, we talk about the Innovation Authority a lot on a lot of these episodes.
So, for example, we approached them at the early stage of the company to fund some of the project based on the very initial proof of concept that we did, and they said it's too ambitious for the project that we suggested. So
that's interesting. Yeah, because the Innovation Authority usually does take on very high risk type of things.
So it was too high for them.
Interesting.
They see it not as a failure story, but as a success story, because we achieved all the milestones in the program that we submitted to them in less than a year, where the program was a year and a half. So maybe we will approach them again. Maybe we will see. But that was a challenge to convince others that it's not, that it's going to work. It's not a dream.
What sort of recommendations do you have for founders who are at the beginning of their journey?
Well, I guess that a lot of luck would always be.
So you tell them to be lucky.
I would tell them to be lucky, but no, it's more than this. I would say that I talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think that there are two kinds of entrepreneurs as I see. The people like me that came with a scientific or technical background and had the opportunity or the situation to generate something new with their knowledge. And for them, I have lots of advices, which I will say. But the other type is the type that came from business, and they want to take something cool or to go with someone very technical and to get something. For them, I have another advice. So the first kind, cool science doesn't mean a company and doesn't mean a business. You need to think. And this is something that took a while for me. And again, luckily, I had Shmulik and Boaz covering, which are great partners. You need to think how you make money out of it. And to think how to make money out of it, it doesn't mean that you take all the things under account. It doesn't necessarily how to think of a business plan. Is to think how to make your science a product, a scalable product, a patentable product, something that really can be manufactured, can really benefit someone else. Like, you need to study it very well, and especially, again, to know what it means to own an IP at the beginning. This is like I would say insufficient but necessary condition, okay, to know this. After this, you can build up a business model but if you have nothing, if your technology you can't have IP and the business model and the scalable approach, then it's just science. You don't necessarily have to make company out of it. And for people that comes with the business and not the technical, you need to study the techniques very good, because some scientist or engineer will tell you it can take a year to build this product. But if you come from this field and you know it properly, then you know it's not going to take a year. It's going to take 3 years and you need much more money than you thought. And even if you have the business plan and everything, it depends where you're coming from.
So that's interesting. So you're saying to the scientists, learn the business and study the business. And to the business people, you're saying, start learning the science, get into the science. So everyone has to sort of, on their own, can't rely on other people. But,
you can't.
But really understanding the other perspective.
Exactly. Now, you don't have to be expert. Like, you don't have to have a PhD. If you came from business, you don't have to have a PhD in the field, but you need to know the field. Like, you need to have experience in this field and read a lot about it and to know it. I mean, it's very important. And if you come from science, so again, the fact that you have a cool science doesn't mean that you have a company. That's a whole perspective, to change the perspective in your mind. It takes a while.
Let me ask you, we're sitting here in Tel Aviv with a beautiful view of part of Tel Aviv. What impact does being in Israel have on Itay&Beyond?
I will start from my motto, and then I will go to specific answer your question. So I will say that regardless of where we're sitting, drug development is the worst, I would call it a cost-effective field.
It's very risky.
Very risky. Inside drug development, the field of brain, neurology, and psychiatry is extra risky. Inside of it, the field of autism, and it's like that's a graveyard.
The odds are stacked against you right now.
And then to do it in Israel during a war, and
A pandemic. You started during a pandemic.
A pandemic, right? Yeah. It was during a pandemic. So the pandemic, it was an advantage because we had the vaccines. That was an advantage to be in Israel. That was just like a good starting point. But then when the pandemic stopped and all this, politics and the war started, it became harder. And I always say that, like, when I talk with people, when we will succeed, it will be despite of everything. Mm-hmm. Now, specifically to Israel, okay? Because I'm very patriot and I really love this country. I wouldn't do it anywhere else. And I will tell you why, despite everything that I said, because I believe that this type of innovation, this type of groundbreaking technology in all the world, okay, we can pinpoint of people or companies that are matched to our technological abilities. I don't know if we will succeed. Maybe they will have more money or more options or more connections. But in the technological and invention level, we are at the top. And it was so easy for me to find here in Israel the best scientists and the best people and I worked with a lot of scientists in my life from United States and from the Middle East and from Asia. And to find the people that were here, it's not, I wouldn't take it as granted at all. And everything that we did in such a low budget and such a minimal amount of time was just because of the creativity of the team. And I know for a fact that it's hard to find this kind of people, and that it's not by chance that Israel is not just startup nation. It's like I would say like innovation nation because of this. And that's why I wouldn't do it anything different or anywhere else, regardless of the challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a great conversation. I'm glad we had it. And I'm looking forward to reading and hearing about your success and your company's success in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That was Dr. Nisim Perets, the co-founder and CEO of Itay&Beyond. We hope you enjoyed this episode. There are many more to come. Do you have a great innovation or startup idea? We'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us by going to our website, jmbdavis.com. And if you go to jmbdavis.com/startup, you'll see we have a special site specifically made for startups to help startups protect their innovations. Please be in touch with us and find out how we can help you. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode.